All right, so let's kickstart this webinar. Thank you everyone for signing up and welcome to our What About Periods webinar. So my name is Larissa Copello. I'm the consumption production campaigner at Zero Waste Europe, and I'll be the host for the period talk today. So for those that doesn't know our organization, Zero Waste Europe is a Brussels-based NGO working on advocacy at the EU level, but also a network of organizations implementing zero waste strategies at national and local level across Europe. This is the first webinar of the new Zero Waste Live semester. So the webinars happen once a month from October to June, and we cover various waste-related topics. Today's webinar is a really special one because it kicks off the Environmental Week, which starts today from the 17th, and is a week dedicated to put periods on spotlight. So we will talk about issues around periods, about the menstrual products. We're going to break the taboo and ask some recommendations for producers, suppliers, as well as for policymakers. But why we're here talking about periods? Well, there is bloody truth behind periods, especially about conventional single-use menstrual products that we are mostly using today. And periods are actually at the intersection of environment, health, and social issues that we're going to talk about today with our amazing speakers. Our first speaker will be Claudia Giocovelli from the United Nations Environment Program that will present us some findings about their new report on the life cycle analysis of single-use menstrual products and their alternatives. And then we're going to have Helen Lin from the Women's Environment Network, which are actually pioneers of this campaign. And she'll present to us about the Environmental Week campaign and the biggest challenges associated with single-use menstrual products. And our third speaker is Marija from the Friends of the Earth Croatia, and she will talk about how to achieve social and environmental justice through an intersectionality approach, including addressing period poverty. A bit of the webinar structure. So each speaker will have 10 minutes to present, and after 10 minutes, we're going to have some Q&A. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. In the chat box, you can introduce yourself, you can chat among each other, but for specific questions, please use the Q&A box. So we have quite good audience here, but we are also streaming this webinar in our channel at YouTube. Without further delays, let's introduce our first speaker. So Claudia Giocovelli, Program Officer at the Life Cycle Unit and Economic Division at the United Nations Environment Program. So Claudia joined the UNEP Life Cycle Initiative in Paris in 2020. Before, she worked at the UNEP International Environment Technology Center in Osaka for 4 years, where she supported developing countries implement sustainable solutions to environment and climate change challenges with focus on waste management. Her background is in development economics and social science. In her presentation today, she will share the approach used to conduct the LCA method study, present the key findings and recommendations on menstrual products, on what menstrual products to choose, and based on their environmental impact. So let's get ready for some bloody data with our brilliant speaker Claudia. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Larissa, and I'm sharing my presentation. Thank you for the detailed introduction. Okay, so brilliant. Thank you so much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today and to share with you some of the key findings of our newly released report on single-use menstrual products. In fact, what we do is to try and compare the environmental impact of single-use menstrual product versus the environmental impact of their alternatives using a life cycle approach. Why did we decide to do this in the first place? So why a life cycle assessment meta-analysis and why on menstrual products? So the reason behind that is the fact that single-use menstrual products, and this includes tampons and regular pads that are very broadly used, are substantial contributors to plastic waste globally. They have significant environmental impact across their life cycle. Just imagine that in the European Union, there is an estimated number of 49 billion single-use menstrual products used every year and 19 billion used in the US. And the improper disposal of this product, of course, has consequences if they are misdisposed. So we have seen blocked sewers, floodings driven by plastic pollution and freshwater and marine environment contamination. Another big issue why we chose to speak about menstrual product is because this is often a taboo that surrounds the whole topic of menstruation, in fact, and it's difficult to discuss about sustainable menstrual product when we cannot even talk about menstruation in general. So what we have tried to do with our report is to really try to summarize the current knowledge. What we intend by meta-analysis, it means that we have not conducted a life cycle assessment ourselves, but we've summarized the current knowledge available already out there on life cycle assessment about the environmental performance of single-use menstrual product versus their alternative. And we have tried to draw conclusions that are significant for most people, policymakers around the world. So in fact, some of these can assist policymakers in making informed decisions and choices, but I find it, some of the conclusions are very relevant also for us as consumers. When I say we apply a life cycle assessment approach or life cycle thinking, what I mean is really that we look, the analysis that we consider look at the environmental impact of a product or a service along its entire life cycle, from the extraction of the raw materials all the way until the end of life of the product. So the nice part of using a life cycle approach is to really try to highlight along the life of a product or a service, what are the areas where there is the highest potential for impact on the environment along the value chain, and to avoid trade-offs between impacts, so that if you implement an action on a specific part of the value chain, you are not really shifting, for example, its environmental impact on another stage of its value chain. That's why it's so important to look at the whole life cycle of the product. In terms, just for a bit of context, these studies have been developed by UNEP, that is the UN Environment Program. And for those that are not familiar with our organization, UNEP is the UN Global Authority for the Environment. So UNEP sets the environmental agenda for the United Nations, and we focus all our work focuses on the three global crises that have been identified at the moment for the environment. So these are climate, nature, and pollution. And we also call for the UN Environment Assembly, that is the world's largest level decision-making body on the environment, made of all the member states of the UN, and so all the global environment ministry participate in the Environment Assembly. And these studies are very much supported and developed through the Life Cycle Initiative that we also host at UNEP, which is a multi-stakeholder partnership made of private and public stakeholders that enables the global use of life cycle knowledge. So basically, the main objective of the Life Cycle Initiative is really to promote science-based decision-making and consensus building around methodologies for life cycle assessments. So going back to what I mentioned is the UN Environment Assembly that really dictates the highest level decision making for the environment. during this, the fourth UN Environment Assembly in 2019, member states deliberated that UNEP was supposed to, so there are some resolutions that are taken during the Environment Assemblies, and one of the resolutions in 2019 was really asking UNEP to collect informations on single-use plastic product pollution from a life cycle approach. So we went ahead and basically started studying various products. So the menstrual product is in fact part of a bigger work that we are doing on single-use plastic product pollution. And so we have now recommendations available on several studies. We started from looking at shopping bags, so the most common plastic bags that we use for shopping, or that were mostly used for shopping. We compare them with the other reusable option or other single-use option to understand what would be the best possibility available out there. We have looked at bottles, we have looked at takeaway packaging, we have looked at cups, tableware, nappies. Menstrual product is our latest set of recommendations that we have issued, and we are now currently finalizing a meta study on face masks that we aim to publish within the next month, and eventually next year we'll finalize the other meta study on supermarket food packaging. So because we have analyzed so many single-use plastic products, we have quite a good visibility of what overarching conclusion there are out there, and that we can share. In fact, before I go a deep dive into the menstrual product element. So what we have found is that plastic is not the real enemy. In fact, it's really the single-use nature of product that is the most problematic for the planet, even more so than the material that they are made of. So it's very important that products are cleverly designed. So this means that they should be durable and they should be lighter. The lighter the product, normally the lower its environmental footprint. And so what we would like to do is to really encourage member states to promote actions that lead at keeping resources in the economy at their highest value for as long as possible, and try to replace single-use plastic products with reusable products. Fundamentally, what we have also found is that there is not one single solution to plastic product pollution, but taking a life cycle approach can really help in taking the right decision. Now, if moving to the menstrual product meta-analysis, I want to share with you just a short background on the methodology that we've used. So we have analyzed 4 LCA studies from a range of geography. So the one LCA study you can see here, it was looking at Europe, India, and USA. Another one was focusing on Germany, another one was focusing on the USA alone, and another one was from Uganda. Only the one from Uganda was comparing single-use products versus other single-use alternatives. The other studies were all comparing single-use product versus reusable alternatives. And the main criteria that we were using is to try and find studies that were peer-reviewed, because we wanted robust evidence. They needed to be published in English, and they needed to be between 2015 and published between 2015 and 2020, because of course technology changes and product evolve, etc. So we didn't want to use information that were too outdated. In terms of the product that we considered, we studied basically single-use tampons with and without applicator, single-use pads, reusable pads, and the reusable menstrual cup. So if we look at what we found, we see that overall, reusable menstrual products have the lowest environmental impact, and the reusable cup is the one that scores the best. So it means that has the lowest environmental impact. Even in some studies, we saw that even when the cup was sterilized inefficiently or used only for several months, it still has the lowest environmental impact. That said, we still encourage to sterilize properly and to use for a long period of time the product. And this goes still in the rationale that, of course, the longest you keep values at the highest level in the economy, the lesser their environmental impact is. And the other big finding is that relatively compared to single-use products, for reusable products, consumers have a big influence on the environmental impact. So we as consumers can really lower the environmental impact of reusable products just by reusing them for as many times as possible and by washing them, in fact, efficiently. Sterilizing is one thing for the cap, for example, but washing the reusable pads, the washing really impacts a lot on the environmental impact. So how much water do we use? How often do we wash them? The type of soap that we use to wash, etc. So this one is a matrix that we have developed, and it's kind of a tool that you will find in the report. And it tells us basically in a snapshot, in a very visual way, what are the products. So on the y-axis, you will find the consideration of geographical and technological context. And on the X, so horizontally, you will see what are the profile of consumers. So whether they are eco or cost-conscious consumer, or whether they are indifferent consumers. So this matrix helps you really to map what would be the best possible option out there, given your context. At the very top, you will see that in the case of menstrual products, we have these matrices available for most of the products that we have studied, and you will find them all the reports and all of our knowledge products is available on the Lifecycle Initiative website. Particularly for the menstrual product, what you will see at the very top is that besides of your geographical and technological context, and besides of the profile of your consumer, reusable menstrual product, in fact, score as the best available products to be chosen whenever practicable. And what we say by that is that where there is cultural and social acceptance of caps, they score as the best option from an environmental point of view. But that is a very big caveat, because it implies a lot of other political choices, other norms and stereotypes that needs to be overcome in certain contexts. So if the menstrual cup is not practicable, then we go down into the matrix, and I'll just take two blocks as examples. So in a context when there is no formal waste management, and you have a conscious consumer, then the reusable options are better off. And these can be pads or underwear, reusable. While in a context in which, for example, there is a formal advanced waste management system, but the consumer has inefficient washing practices, which means that they're washing above 60, they tumble dry, or they wash with a partially filled machine, or hand wash in hot water, which is not efficient, with the tap running, etc. Then single-use pad or tampons without applicator are the preferred option, unless you are in a context with low carbon electricity mix. In that case, there is a possible preference for reusable. So you can see that depending on what is your way of doing things, so washing and using, and what is your waste management system in the country, then you might have that you might be better or worse off with a specific type of product. So if I continue, then what are the recommendations for policymakers in this case? So first of all, we think that education of consumer on reusable menstrual product alternatives and how to efficiently wash and sterilize the caps and wash the pads is very, very important. We want to make sure that there is always an encouragement given to reuse even reusable products multiple times. The longer the lifespan, the lower the environmental impact. So products should be kept in the economy for as long as possible, for caps at least 1 year. And it's important to advocate for reusable menstrual products. So, for example, when we think about public procurement done for girls, for example, there are a lot of governments that do that. They should start considering also reusable products. It's important that in order for reusable products to be really practical, then needs to be accompanied by adequate infrastructure in schools and government facilities. This means, for example, to ensure that the bathrooms are private, that they are clean, with working sinks so that the product can be washed nicely. And it's important to focus effort also on transitioning to low carbon electricity, because we have seen that that is one of the conditions that reduces basically the environmental impact of reusable products. Among the tips that we can give on how to efficiently sterilize cups and launder pads, for example, we can say that one way to sterilize cups efficiently is by placing the cup in a small bowl or a mug and pouring over it water that has been boiled in a kettle, or if sterilizing it by boiling in water, but using a small container, for example. So just minimum tweaks to the way we do things can really reduce the energy that we use for sterilizing and washing our reusable menstrual products. So far, we talked a lot about reusable products, but what happens if we are comparing single-use products between themselves? In fact, what we found from a life cycle perspective is that there is no clear preferred option between single-use products. But what stands out a little bit, if we were to find a preference between single-use products, then we would say that tampon without applicator and pads from locally sourced material would be preferred. So if we are looking at single-use products, then how we can reduce, and this is mostly for producers really. So if there are producers out there, these are our recommendations for you. The environmental impacts of single-use menstrual products can be reduced by using locally made products. So we could choose, as consumer, we could prefer, if we really have to go with single-use, at least prefer locally made product. For producers, the product need to be lighter and super absorbent material. This would reduce the number of times that people need to change, so the number of products of single-use products that are used, and ensure it's important that also there the infrastructure for waste collection and disposal of single-use menstrual product are up to the state of the art. One thing with single-use products is that contamination concerns, of course, reduce recycling of menstrual products. A big consideration, as I said, we found this really for every single-use plastic product, not only with menstrual products, but for menstrual products is even more acute, is that there is not one single solution, but geographical and social context is extremely important before you promote a particular product. So even if the menstrual cup seems to be the most environmentally preferred by a considerable margin, we cannot promote it unless there is a wider social and economic system that is able to accommodate it. So we need to make sure, so especially in certain geographies, this is very important and very true. There is a need for greater education and information on reusable menstrual products, really to give the women the chance and freedom to choose the best product for their condition, for their situation, and to really drive social acceptance of menstrual product. And with that, I thank you very much. The report, we share the report link here, and I think Larissa will be able to show also the presentation after the webinar. But if you have any question, I'll be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia. It's really nice, interesting study. We've got, we indeed shared in the chat the link to the full study that Claudia has just presented. And we have a couple of questions here. As we are kind of running short on time, I will try to mix two in one question here. So there's a question about if they study or if biodegradable menstrual products has been looked at as also one sustainable option, or and also if reusable menstrual cups, if they are recycled, if the fact that they are recycled after the end of their life has been taken into account as well in the study.
Thank you for that. So yes, for the reusable cap, yes, one of the elements that has been looked at is the end of life, and there is possibility of recyclability is more possible with the reusable cup, for example, than it would be for single-use menstrual products. So yes, the end of life has been taken into account in the study, and that also what contributes to reducing the environmental impact of the reusable menstrual cup. And for the other question, in terms of biodegradable product, we did not consider those. However, there is among the reusable product that we have studied, so especially for the pads, there are some of them that were made of eco-friendly material. So the fiber were made from eco-friendly material, but we have not specifically focused on, there were no basically life cycle assessment studies available, published and peer-reviewed that were looking at biodegradable products.
Thank you. Thanks, Claudia. Yeah, and regarding biodegradability of products, it's just a point here that is like different types of biodegradability as well. It can be industrially compostable or home compostable or soil or marine. It depends. And also, yeah, the way it's only is going to be compostable or biodegradable if in certain circumstances, according to the material, etc. And also it needs separate collection. So if there's no separate collection, it will end up in the residual and mixed waste, and it will end up maybe landfill, incinerated, or whatever the destination of that waste stream. In a study that Zero Waste Europe has done as well, I think there was also passed in the chat, there is a touch on the biodegradability issue, so if you're interested to look further. Do you want to say anything else, Claudio, or no?
More that, so even for menstrual cups, what one of the recommendations is that this core is the best environmentally friendly option, basically, but there are some more studies needed to understand the health, if there is any health, depending on the plastic that they are made of the material that they're made of, there might be some health complication or some better guidelines on how to use them, for how long they can be used. And same thing would go for biodegradability. Basically, you would need to be extremely careful not to have any issue with that. And recyclability of, even if they are compostable, as you say, there are different, so it's quite a sensitive issue for menstrual product, especially because of the contaminated nature of the product at the end, which would make them anyways quite difficult to recycle, as things stay at the moment, at least with the available technology at the moment.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, there are more questions in the chat, in the Q&A box, but we need to go to the next presentation, otherwise we're just going to run out of time. If you have time at the end, we can have a more Q&A with all the speakers. But also, yeah, Claudia, feel free to maybe answer some questions if you want, if you are directed to you in the chat box, in the question and answers box as well. So let's jump to our second speaker, which is the Helen Lin, which is the Environment Campaign Manager at the Women's Environment Network. And the Women Environment Network, they're actually pioneers of the period movement. So Helen has campaigned on the issues linking to gender, health, and the environment for the last 25 years, specifically in relation to the links between health and toxic chemicals in consumer products, such as cosmetics and period products. She founded the Alliance for Cancer Prevention and was one of the founders of the No More Breast Cancer campaign, campaigning for the recognition of the environment and occupational risk factors for cancer. Helen has spoken widely both in the UK and internationally on environment and occupational cancer prevention, toxic chemicals, and menstruation. She has worked as well with the Women's Engagement for a Common Future on health and gender issues, and she's a health advisor for Women's Environment Network. She's also a research specialist in work on gender, health, and the environment. In her presentation, she will cover what is the Environmental Week campaign, why we need legislation for all period products to be addressed in the European Green New Deal, and what is the convention, what it is in the conventional period products we are using, and the impacts of intentionally and unintentionally added chemicals in these products. So let's give the floor now to our environmental queen, Helen.
Thank you very much, Larissa. Sorry, that was really soon. I'm really honoured to be here, and excellent presentation, Claudia, on an excellent report, really long needed, much needed. I am going to hopefully share my screen now, and sorry, just to wait for this thing to.
I think, yeah, you just need to put in the presentation mode. We can see it, but just
yeah, it does a black, the black thing from the. Oh, wait a second. I can't click on the thing because it's the. Sorry, it's the black thing from the Zoom that's over all the.
That's perfect now.
Buttons. Yeah. Oh, anyway, technology. Anyway, thanks very much. Really pleased to be here talking about this issue at the start of Environmental Week. So happy Environmental Week of Action 21. I think it's also very fortuitous that we're talking about menstruation here today in a week where the UN Human Rights Council recognized the right to a clean and healthy and sustainable environment, because I think WEN also believes that we have a right to safe, healthy and sustainable menstruation, because unhealthy menstrual products can not only harm us, but they also harm the environment as well. And I have been campaigning, yes, on this issue since I used to menstruate myself. And I started working WEN in 1995 on the menstruation campaign. And what the campaign taught me was really how to love my period. But it also opened up my eyes to the impacts period products are having on our health and the health of the environment. And so WEN started campaigning on menstruation in 1989, and we began by looking at the chlorine bleaching of wood and paper pulp to make period pads and nappies. And at the time, we were one of the only organizations talking and campaigning about menstruation. It was a very lonely place, not like today. And it wasn't until 2004 that we coined the phrase environmental to link menstruation with the environment. And since then, I think the campaign has really gone from strength to strength, and that's thanks to all the people campaigning on this at WEN. We now have an environmental coalition with over 60 members, and they all campaign together for safer, more sustainable, affordable and healthier period products. We trained 47 ambassadors, environmental ambassadors, in conjunction with City to Sea, and they also deliver workshops in schools and universities about all aspects of menstruation. But they also introduce students to reusables that they can actually see and feel and touch and talk about possibly for the first time. And I think, as with many aspects of WEN campaigns, menstruation is a multifaceted issue, and the decades of advertising by period product manufacturers, along with the cultural and gender prejudices, have reinforced the stigma and taboos around menstruation, as Claudia mentioned as well. And I think this has had very serious impacts. So it's not really surprising to hear that 48% of girls in the UK are embarrassed about their periods. And this embarrassment actually harms women, it harms girls, and it harms people who menstruate, and it also harms the environment as well. So we get the situation where like 2 billion period products are flushed down UK toilets each year, possibly in an attempt to hide the fact that people are actually menstruating, but also I think about a lack of understanding about where things go when they're flushed down the toilet. They end up in our waterways and on our beaches and in our seas and rivers. So this creates a big problem in the environment, because we know that up to 90% of a period pad, a single-use disposable one, can be plastic. And also tampon plastic applicators are made of plastic as well. And we find that 10% of the sewage-related debris, which makes up about 9% of beach waste, is made up of pad liners, backing strips, tampons and applicators still. I'm not sure if I looked if flushing is as big a problem in Europe as it is in the UK, because the statistics in Europe from Zero Waste Europe said that 83% of period products end up being landfilled and 13% are incinerated. Maybe that's something we can talk about as well. But also we have the biggest issue with period poverty. And this means that women, girls and people who menstruate just can't afford period products, and especially reusables, because the initial outlay can be so much more than just buying a packet of pads. And we know, especially during lockdown, 10% of girls couldn't access period products because they were locked inside the schools that were, the free ones were locked inside the schools that were all closed during lockdown. So when initiated Environmental Week in 2018, and this was to amplify the conversation around reusables and plastic-free periods, but also to seek to break the taboo around periods so that we could actually be period proud. And I think it has helped the conversation, as well as all the campaigning groups that have grown up around campaigning around menstruation, which has been really inspiring. But also we want to help ensure that everyone has access to healthy period products. And we think that to ensure that this happens, we need regulations. We need regulations and legislation on period products. The mainstream period product manufacturers and their products are virtually unregulated, with only the General Product Safety Directive in Europe and I think it's the General Product Safety Regulations in the UK are voluntary codes to ensure safety and sustainability. And also we have no right to know about what's actually in our period products. When Naturcare launched a petition this week calling for greater transparency and legislation for all menstrual products, reusables and single-use disposables, because we also believe that legislation should address every aspect of menstruation, from period poverty to sustainability to affordability and waste management, but also, and more importantly than all, that period products, including reusables, need to be safe for us to use and safe for the environment. And we think that transparency is very popular as well, because we conducted a YouGov survey, and that found that 85% of respondents want full ingredients transparency about what's in their period products. And even industry reports cite that 42% of women surveyed who menstruated were concerned about the harmful chemicals in period products. And kind of really shockingly, when we were doing the research for this campaign, we came across these very old period product adverts. And together with Naturcare, we launched a caption competition to show how ludicrous they were. Now, some of these adverts are about 50 years old, but some of them are a lot more recent. And if you look at them, I think this is the foundation of the mythical and insidious menstrual odor that major period product industry has provided us with so many products to address over the years. These odors that we don't notice ourselves, but according to these adverts, that all our friends are talking behind our backs, and odors that repel our husbands and assault humanity in general. And this is just reinforcing the stigma and taboo around menstruation. But what's, I think, less obvious is the many chemical residues that have been found in period products. Now, some are intentionally added and some are not. And independent testing of period products such as tampons and pads by health and environment organizations and NGOs revealed that many toxic residues, including pesticides, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and chemicals linked to cancer and reproductive disorders in period products. And these residues could arise from the processing of the plastic that's in pads, for example, which can contain up to, I think it's 5 plastic bags worth of plastic. They could be there from the bleaching of the wood and the paper pulp. So we see residues like dioxin and chlorine. They could come from the crop spraying, the cotton crop spraying with glyphosate, which is a probable carcinogen. And then along with fragrance and odor control technologies, which we're not allowed to know about at all as they're commercially confidential. And though of us, we know that the skin, the very delicate skin around the vagina and the vulva is very absorbent as well. And irritation of the skin can increase the risk of contracting other infections and increase the risk of sexually transmitted infections as well. And that's what these residues do. They irritate the skin around the vagina and vulva. But more insidiously, their presence also raises concerns about links with menstrual problems and diseases like endometriosis. And we know that drugs can be effectively delivered through the vagina, and that menstrual blood as well can be used to detect levels of chemical contaminants in our bodies from other sources. And again, we're not just exposed to these chemicals via period products, we're exposed to them in our daily lives as well, and through other products, and in our workplace as well, possibly. And I think, sort of in the rush for innovation, possibly we haven't been so much concerned with health and safety because harmful chemicals such as PFAS were also found in some period pads in America. Now, PFAS is a very toxic, very persistent chemical linked to cancer and heart diseases. They have no place in period products. And we know that the majority of these chemicals are also made from fossil fuels, so also linked strongly with climate change as well. And in the UNEP report, it said that we do not have a full picture about how these products are impacting our health and environment because they're not considered, the chemicals are not considered in life cycle analysis, or the effects are underestimated. So there are gaps in the data on the identity, the quantity and toxicity of the chemicals used in these products. So this is why we need legislation. We need transparency from the period product manufacturers. This week, we've just released new research as well in conjunction with NatureCare, which revealed that 1 in 4 people suffer from skin reactions when using these perfume period products, and 28% of those surveys claimed that the problem was very or fairly severe. Now, only 1 in 10 people actually claim to like the smell of these scented pads and liners, but 15% of 18 to 24-year-olds claimed that they felt actually pressurized to conceal the smell of their period. You see, this menstrual odor myth again is still percolating here. And this same age group were the ones most targeted by social media adverts for fragrance intimate products. Nearly a quarter of those surveyed had bought fragrance products because there was nothing else available. And in 4 major retailers, nearly half of the panty liners and a third of the pads contains perfumes. We need to see an end to this. This is unnecessary. And again, just reinforces the whole stigma and taboo around menstruation. This year also we saw the production of a report by WCF and the EEB looking at the European Green New Deal. And in that report, we did a chapter looking at menstrual products. And so some of the recommendations would be that specific legislation is needed on all period products, reusables and single-use disposables. And this is to ensure safety and transparency throughout the life cycle. Based on the UNEP report, obviously a lot of the information. And legislation needs to be linked to the EU circular economy plan in relation to chemicals, waste and plastics, and also in line with the chemical strategy for sustainability. We want to see all ingredients and all test results of the product should be on the period product manufacturers' websites and on the packaging as well if there's room. We need to see a removal of all the period product tax, the tax on period products, including the tax on reusables such as period pants, and reusable and safe disposable products and facilities should be available in all schools and colleges and universities, along with straightforward information on how to use, dispose or wash the products if needed. So what's needed really, I think we need to adapt a more period positive approach to menstruation education to combat these cultural taboos and stigma and make the connections also with sustainable development and the impacts on climate change. So thank you very much for listening. At the start of Environmental Week, please go to our website and see what else is happening. Do take part, do share on social media, do tweet and Instagram. There are lots of activities there as well. You can also help by supporting WEN, by becoming a member, because we all need funding to do these campaigns. And also we're looking at talking to councils as well. On Friday, we have an Instagram live about councils who are paving the way really on distributing free period products to schools in their locality. So please do join us as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen, for the great presentation. And it's really astonishing to see, oh my God, all the names of the chemicals in that slide. It's like, whoa, not really nice to know all these chemicals are in the products that you're using. Actually, there is a question, but I think you addressed briefly that maybe you can describe a bit more about it, about, yeah, if the reusable options, if there are safer reusable options as regarding chemicals, if the cups or, I don't know, other materials has less chemicals than single-use ones. What's your take on that?
For sure, definitely, yes, much less. And as Claudia said, you know, the menstrual cup is a really good option if it's viable. It may not be viable for lots of people. You can use the pads, even some of the organic single-use disposables if needed. And I think people kind of can mix and match really according to whatever is useful for them to use. But definitely much less chemicals found, if none at all, of harmful, not harmful chemicals found in reusables, not like the single-use disposables. I should have said that slide, it was taken from a timeline of testing that Women's Voices for the Earth have done. It's up on their website, really useful. And that was really just all the chemicals that had been found over the last couple of years in period products, but mainly and predominantly single-use disposables, apart from that one test that I've done on period pants. And it was only some period pants, not all. And I think that if people want to try some options, the members of Environmental Coalition produce really viable, safer options for people to try out. And we have discount codes as well on the website that people can use if that's helpful.
Yes, thanks. There's also another question here about, the reusable products can be easily to make. So if there's like, why not to expand the access to do it yourself tips and instructions about reusable menstrual pads? I'm sure. I think there will be also an event, right? About how to make your own.
Yes, there is an event. Yes, there is an event on how to make your own menstrual pads, and the information is up on our website. I can just put my diary. It is. I think it's this evening. If people want to join up, and there are our ambassadors as well are also doing podcasts and trainings and Instagram lives around making their own pads as well. So yeah, it can be a great fun activity, a great reuse of materials as well, nice soft cotton that you can use, well-washed cotton. So yeah, definitely the way to go, yeah.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Helen. And for the sake of time, we need to go for the last presentation. So our last speaker is Marija Miliewski. She's Waste Management Officer of Friends of the Earth Croatia. She's an environmental activist and feminist. And apart from working fighting plastic pollution, she's passionate educator on the topic of climate environment activism with a strong focus on anti-oppression, inclusiveness, and intersectionality. So she'll give a presentation on the topic of intersectionality, explain the connection of systems of oppression and why the intersectional approach is important in shaping environmental campaigns, including Environmental Week. So unfortunately, Anna had a last minute issue and she'll not be able to give a live presentation today. But as we're all super excited to hear about her topic, she did her best in recording her presentation for us. So let's see our amazing environment and feminist activist has to tell us today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Marija Miliewski. I come from Zelena Akcija, and I will give a short presentation on how to end period poverty and achieve social and environmental justice. I'm talking on behalf of Menstrual Task Force of Break Free from Plastic team, while also with experience from being in Friends of the Earth International Gender Justice and Dismantling Patriarchy Working Group. So these are also the resources that were used to make this presentation. It's to put the frame on how to actually tackle period poverty in intersectional way. So that's how I will start this presentation with first explaining the intersectionality. So intersectionality, the whole concept, is used as actually as a framework, and it's used to describe how power structures emerge and interact in between themselves. They are defined as the interaction between gender, race, and also other social identity categories of difference in individuals' lives, but also social practices, institutional arrangements, cultural ideologies, and the outcomes of these interactions in terms of power. The term was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who is a legal scholar from African American living in US. And she explained how different forms of power and systematic oppressions interact often on multiple and simultaneous levels. So not that there is just one thing that is oppressing, but that there are often many, and that they kind of overlap and create these simultaneous levels. So these oppressive institutions, we can also name them and recognize them. Probably most of the audience is aware of the existence, but it's good to mention them. It is racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, xenophobia, classism, ageism, and also others. They are not everything, there are many, unfortunately. And so based on this theory, they're all interconnected, and we cannot actually examine them separately one from another. As I mentioned, they not just interlink, but they also mutually reinforce each other. And through this interlinking, the elites or the dominant social class in our society hold on to their economic and political social power and exclusively and solely by oppressing and exploiting the majority. And the majority, which is of actually lower social power, is working class, women, transgender, non-binary people, people of color, First Nation, indigenous people, and people of non-dominant ethnicity, and all of them being menstruators, actually. To explain, it's also to explain the framework, I chose to explain two systems of oppression that are influencing period poverty the most. So first is capitalism. We all know because we live in this system, but it's still worth mentioning. Capitalism as a globally dominant economic and socio-ideological model of our time. The logic is based on profit accumulation and the infinite economic growth and concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few. It also exploits both women and nature as infinite resources. and treats them that way. So in this system, we have 1% of global population that is receiving 82% of the world's wealth in total. And so this model keeps itself alive, so it sustains through the control and exploitation, as I already mentioned, of territories and work. And of course, it leaves huge and destructive consequences for nature, people, and in particular for women. It is often describes, and that's how we also learn in school, that it's a progress, it's a development, and a free market. So we learn as something good, but it's actually a system that works on the basis of inequality, and therefore it enhances and creates and reproduces the oppression on social class, which is of less power. So the elite, or the dominant class, we can also name it that way, is so they concentrate on exploiting the labor and controlling the resources. Sorry. So, for example, what is in control is wealth that can be invested, but also inputs to production, which is such as machine and raw material. They're all in control of the dominant class. In this way, it is also part of the decision making. So the elite excludes the working class and majority from political, economic, and social power. And this exclusion in our society has actually like real measurable effect. So it's not something that we imagine and say, yeah, we are excluded from some things, but actually it is proven that it can influence life expectancy, health, education, housing, and also contact with criminal justice system. So it is real and it is measurable. That's the most important thing. So we can tackle it. Another system of oppression is patriarchy, and it goes hands by hands with capitalism. We can say and understand them as like two twins or best friends or any kind of relation in between, but super close systems. So patriarchy is a system that actually supports capitalism because it oppresses and exploits women and non-cis men in general, their work and their bodies, and to benefit cis men as a social group as a whole. So it is organized through sexual division of labor, and it's maintained and perpetuated by traditions, norms, education, and material resources. To sustain this capitalist model, there is this economic difference between men and women. And women often don't have money for their own needs or the needs of their families, and they're often financially dependent on their husbands or male family members. So how it is related to period poverty. All these previous named systems are influencing social inequalities, which are influencing the privileges and therefore purchasing power of menstruators, because in previous part, economic system and economic oppression of women is real, so they have less of purchasing power than men. In relation to period products and period poverty, a lack of these privileges can affect the access to period products, but also hygiene habits of many menstruators. So it's important to know, and that's why we did explain all these systems of oppression that influence the fact that not everyone has access and knowledge about toxic-free reusable menstrual items. If we look at European Union marketplace, it is currently flooded, and not only European Union, but we are now talking about this context, but it is flooded with cheap single-use plastic, often toxic period products, and they are the only known mainstream options, and therefore the only known and accessible option for underprivileged menstruators. If we would go out of the circles of privilege and higher education class, we would find out that it's not what everybody knows about these products, and that it's actually that we know about these products from the position of our own privilege, which is something that we cannot influence, because privileges are something that we cannot influence. Also, companies are important here, because in capitalist system, which was explained before, where the sole purpose is to accumulate profit, of course, the profit is prioritized. So disposable products are more profitable at the given moment, because you can infinitely produce them. And many menstruators depend on them. But they actually harm the environment and also people's health. But the decision makers, or the elite, also part of the elite, so not just the producers, but also decision makers, are encouraging them to do so. And how they're encouraging them to do so? Through policies and maybe lack of policies. So it is power is in their hands, but if they're letting them do so, it is actually their choice to do it. So we can say that they are encouraging them. Even though better alternatives for period products exist, for decades already, such as period pens and menstrual cups that today we are talking about, the population that uses them is still the minority. For all the previously mentioned reasons. But there are also other reasons that reusable products are not widely spread or part of the mainstream. First thing is period taboo. Now talking about it is already something that could not be probably imagined even 10 years ago or something in the public discourse, that we are talking about periods. And menstruators are also therefore misinformed, discouraged, and disempowered, because it is still perceived as something dirty, something private, something intimate. And as feminists, we can say that actually, yeah, private is public, and we should talk about it and put it in a public discourse. So another reason is misinformation and a lack of education. As I said, it is still shameful, and there is no systemic education about it in schools or health institutions, universities. It is matter of a private choice, and it's not publicly available. That leads us to unavailability. We cannot find them in regular shops for that menstruators could reach normally, like all the wide range of menstruators, not just privileged ones that have knowledge and also economic power to purchase them. So these products are mostly available in online shops. So in order to get something from online shop, you need to have the access to the internet. You need to know to have specific interests, actually, to discover that it exists. So it is something that cannot be that is not very practical for everyone. Also, there are some specific handcraft markets that also are not visited by a wide and mainstream population. And in general, we cannot find them. In supermarkets or mainstream retailers, maybe only recently in few shops they are starting to appear, but still they are not, there is not a wide range of options, and many of we don't see commercials about them or anything, advertisements, mainstream advertisements. So it is more likely that underprivileged would not reach for that product. Also, the initial inaccessibility is a problem because the initial investments can be a barrier for some, especially if we go back to how many women are depending on, for example, financial power of their partners and don't have their own monthly incomes. Then we can imagine that even 20 euros, let's say, approximate price for example, a period cup is a lot. So if we are, if for the ones in need, they even struggle to get single-use products, let alone like something that you need to invest in. And also, yeah, to mention with inaccessibility, it's not just that it's a matter of investment, it's also a matter of that researchers are actually, that are now happening all over Europe, are showing that that many women cannot afford, even if they would want. So even the ones that know about these products cannot afford them. So it is really like the matter of economic power to buy them still. Another thing is that a big responsibility is placed on the consumers, and in capitalist model, citizens are equal consumers, so we don't see ourselves as citizens, but the only power that we have is as consumers, and it is focused on less privileged half of the population, and that are menstruators, such as women, trans, and non-binary, and the rest. And so at the same time, while we think that it's menstruators' responsibility, companies are accumulating profit selling these single-use plastic products, while these externalities, or the real price, are paid by health of menstruators, environmental pollution, and citizens' monthly waste management bills. So health of menstruators, it is also a matter of public money. So therefore, we know that it's not just the problem of menstruators, it is a problem of the whole population, environmental pollution as well. So it all comes back to our pockets. So it's not just the problem of menstruators, it's the problem of everyone's problem. And we can say that actually the problem of period poverty, in which this is a basic need to be able to even come to work or to be part of the system, relies on purchasing power, is a symptom of neoliberal capitalism, which is in the hands of the elite. So why it is a symptom of a neoliberal capitalism is because menstruators are expected to take care of it themselves, but they are still also expected to be workers and to accumulate the profit for capitalists. And they don't have any responsibility to provide this for their workers. So it is how the system perpetuates. If it would have been the responsibility of producers and capitalists, they would not be able to accumulate the profit, and therefore the system would not keep on moving forward and rolling as it is. So now that we have said all of that, we can see that it's actually a systemic problem. It's not the individual's problem. Yeah, I'm a bad worker, I could not find a decent job, so therefore I cannot buy a period product, and therefore it's my fault. There are many systems of oppression that leads to menstruators not being able to actually afford themselves these products. So, and any products, not just reusable, but any. And therefore, the solution needs to be systemic, and we need to tackle this issue using intersectional and systemic approach. because it must not stay as a burden of underprivileged people that have no actual power to influence the change. So the solutions lies in systemic education programs in schools and community centers, and so that it is approachable and accessible to all the menstruators, and then we can say that they can make informed choices, not only about their period, but their bodies and their budget and so on. Currently, it's not the choice, and not everybody has the information. So we first need to deal with that. Also, what we need is widespread availability of toxic-free and reusable menstrual products, and but it's not enough. It also needs to be combined with awareness-raising measures on the benefits of reusables compared to single-use menstrual products, what we are doing now by having this presentation and this webinar. Also, what would be helpful, because we go back to economic and purchasing power, is economic incentives for these products. So, for example, it could be discounts, or it could be some vouchers, or anything that would stimulate purchase of reusable menstrual products. But we also need a strong encouragement from, actually, if we look from the perspective of European Union, we need the strong encouragement to reduce or eliminate taxes, which would be the best option on reusable menstrual products. Therefore, they would become more accessible to all the menstruators. Also, legal obligation to phase out hazardous chemicals that are currently in single-use plastic menstrual products. So so we want them out, and we want that to disclose the ingredients list of their products. Currently, they are not regulated, and then they contain many toxic chemicals. And for example, that is a fun fact that, for example, sex toys are more regulated than, for example, period products, like the what is inside of them. So you can think what you want about this information, but that is currently the deal. And yeah, and this is a choice, and while this is not a choice, and half of the population depends on them. So free products, that would be also another way of solution, and especially for the ones that cannot afford these products. So for example, through, as we mentioned, community centers or health centers, and they should be distributed. For this present, so that is all from me, and I used, as I mentioned, the combination of 3 publications and my own experience as both a feminist and environmentalist. So if you want to find out more, I would encourage you to read the Bloody Manifesto and sign if you haven't. And also, if you want to know more about how environmentalism and feminism are connected, then I would suggest Friends of the Earth International's publication, Why Gender Justice and Dismantling Patriarchy, and also Toolkit for Intersectional Movement Building by Young Friends of the Earth Europe. Thank you for your attention. Hello.
So yeah, we just heard the great presentation from Anna, sharing about this intersectionality approach and systems of oppression can influence, what we are living today, or we're dealing today, and the issues about menstrual products, single-use menstrual products. And as we can see, indeed, it's a systemic. We need to tackle this issue in a systemic approach, and it's really like knowing the root of the problem is really to understand how to best tackle. So it's not about giving reusable to everyone, or it's only really about understanding the situations. I mean, what works for each circumstances, and about period education. I think it's one of the most important. It's like period education. Talk about periods, break the taboo. It's like one of the biggest call for this Environmental Week as well. We are already ahead of time, but maybe just Helen and Claudia, if you want to say, last words, last thoughts on that, and a final message, just quick one for the participants, and then we close. Thanks. Claudia, you can go first.
Thank you very much, Larissa. And yes, very, very interesting, and it's great to see that eventually from a health perspective, from a social perspective, the messaging pretty much aligns. And we all sustain, for example, from the finding of our study, it's really that the key message is that there is no one solution to single-use plastic products, whether it is about plastic bags, whether it is about menstrual products. It's really important that we promote reusables, and that we also work on the acceptability, on the social norms and all the other stereotypes. So break the stereotypes really that goes along with it. So talking more, raising the awareness of consumer, producers and policymakers is extremely important. I have to slightly disagree with the message that was passed earlier. So Anna mentioned about the fact that the menstrual cup. So she also agrees on the fact that the menstrual cup is the most preferred option from the environmental perspective. And this is also one of our key findings, that one of the messages in the presentation was the fact that we don't talk enough about the menstrual cup, for example, in mainstream media, so not so many people know about that. At the moment, everything is changed. So mainstream before was TV, now mainstream can be a Facebook ad, mainstream can be social media. So what is mainstream now is very different to what was mainstream before. So I think actually accessibility of information is so much higher now, because even extremely poor people in rural villages will have a cell phone with data. So actually it's much, much easier to reach out now than it was 10 years ago. So I think we need to also get outside the box when we think of communication and how we want to reach people. It is much easier now, so we can do it. It is possible to pass those messages, and the information is out there. We have good data, robust information. So it's really a matter about informing people, and we can reach them. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Claudia. Helen?
Yeah, I was really interesting point from Anna about sex toys. I didn't realize that. That's kind of quite shocking. Anyway, yeah, I mean, similar thoughts to Claudia. I think that we need a strategy, we need legislation, we need regulation, but we need a strategy as well, because there's so many facets to menstruation. We need to tackle it, from all aspects, really. Certainly when you think about period poverty and the waste issue. I think we've kind of seen the rise of the reusables. I think there's about, when the UK sales have gone up to 15% now, whereas 8% maybe last year. So, we have to see the rise of the reusables and the decrease of the single-use disposables, or else the single-use disposables have to kind of rise to being as safe as the reusables, I think. But yeah, we need to kind of tackle it from all angles. And I think we need to be persuading our governments to do this, and certainly linking it with climate change as well, with the COP coming up, because these products use a lot of the Earth's resources, but they also use a lot of fossil fuels as well, in terms of the chemicals that are used and the chemicals that are found in the residues that are found in these products. So yeah, I think the time is now really, and certainly you've seen a lot of takeovers on Instagram about this issue, and it's been incredibly inspiring. Like I said, from going for a time where nobody was talking about this issue to, it seems like everybody is talking about this issue. So it's time to reclaim it really now. So go Environmental Week.
Thank you so much, Helen. And yes, so yeah, this week is Environmental Week. So please join our activities. I think there's already passed in the chat, the websites, the links of activities. So you know more about all the issue, have all the resources as well, reports, information, a lot of events happening all across Europe. So join us. And as well, you can sign up as well for the Zero Waste Cities newsletter. There you're going to see all the other webinars that we're going to promote from October until June. And there's also 2 sections as well there where there will be the presentations from today's speakers. And yeah, you can know more about our work as well and join us in our message. So thank you everyone again for attending. Thank you for amazing speakers today, the great presentation. And hope you have a great afternoon and see you soon. Bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.